The hum of the airbase at dawn was deceptively calm. Concrete stretched endlessly under the pale orange light, dotted with F-22 Raptors glinting like black diamonds. Mechanics hustled around, checking every panel, every seam, while pilots in flight suits moved with precision, their faces set and unreadable behind dark visors. No one noticed the unassuming civilian walking across the tarmac, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, her jeans and hoodie starkly out of place amid the sea of military regalia. Clara Hayes stopped near the flight line, her heart hammering in her chest. She wasn't supposed to be here. She didn't have the credentials, the clearance, or even the uniform. She was just a civilian, an aviation enthusiast with a history of small-time flight simulations and a knack for mechanics, nothing more. Yet here she stood, staring at the most advanced fighter jets in the world, a forbidden playground shimmering under the morning sun. Her eyes lingered on a sleek F-22, the way it seemed almost alive, every panel and curve whispering power. She reached into her bag, fingers brushing against the tool kit she had painstakingly packed over months, not for mischief, but for a chance that seemed impossibly tiny, a chance to prove herself. Her plan was reckless. She knew it. Yet her curiosity, her stubborn drive, demanded action. From the corner of her eye, a group of pilots approached, laughing and slapping each other on the shoulders. Their banter was casual, but to Clara, every word was a reminder of her outsider status. She hugged her bag tighter. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered to herself, though the words felt hollow. She had rehearsed every possible scenario in her head, being asked to leave, being yelled at, being ignored. But what she hadn't prepared for was the exact moment when her voice might actually matter. Suddenly, a loudspeaker crackled. "All personnel clear the tarmac for incoming flight tests." The pilots straightened immediately, the casual laughter evaporating into focused urgency. Clara's pulse spiked. Flight tests meant strict protocols, nothing left to chance. The sheer audacity of stepping onto this field, where even a small misstep could be catastrophic, made her stomach twist. And yet, she moved forward, every step echoing against the concrete, determined to reach the control hut she had memorized from satellite images and blueprints. One pilot's gaze snapped toward her. His eyes, sharp and piercing, assessed her in a fraction of a second. "Hey," he called, voice clipped. "You don't belong here." Clara froze, heart pounding like a jet engine. The duffel bag felt heavier with each beat. She started, but words failed her. Then she made a choice she hadn't fully considered. Instead of retreating, she kept walking, head high, forcing the stranger to acknowledge her presence. Her footsteps carried her past rows of jets, past crews preparing equipment, past warning signs she knew she was technically violating. Inside her, a storm raged: fear, excitement, adrenaline. And then she saw it, the cockpit of an F-22 opening, a pilot sliding in, a helmet glinting in the early light. Something primal stirred in her. She had studied every manual, every schematic, every emergency procedure available to the public. She knew she could navigate one if pushed to the edge. Clara approached the nearest communications post, where a technician tapped at a console. She leaned over, a spark of audacity in her eyes. "I need to talk to the pilots. It's urgent. Call sign Eagle 1, she said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. The technician froze, eyes widening. "Eagle 1, that's not..." Before he could finish, alarms blared. The F-22 engines roared to life and the ground trembled under their power. Clara's declaration, reckless as it was, had pierced the morning calm. Across the tarmac, two pilots in full flight suits glanced at each other, their visors reflecting the sunrise, then back at the comms console. "Did she just say Eagle 1? One asked, voice barely above a whisper. The other's jaw tightened. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, a shiver of disbelief. Clara, still clutching her bag, felt their attention like heat on her back. She wasn't supposed to be noticed, and yet she had been. Her heartbeat spiked as the first jet lifted, engines screaming, shadows slicing the concrete. The pilot's formation was precise, almost lethal in its beauty, and then inexplicably they shifted, banking in a synchronized pattern that didn't match the flight plan. Clara's stomach dropped. Something was happening, something that couldn't be explained by protocols, manuals, or her limited experience. The world around her seemed to slow, the noise fading into a tense silence. A voice crackled through her earpiece, one she hadn't expected to hear. Clear, commanding, cutting through the air like steel. "Eagle One, do you copy?" Her fingers tightened on her bag and her mind raced. How did they know? How could they know her call sign, her chosen, secret call sign? Fear collided with exhilaration. This was no longer about curiosity or rebellion. This was real. Lives, machines, and the very skis themselves now hinged on the next second of action. Clara's lungs burned. Her fingers trembled. Her mind screamed to run, to hide, to vanish into the ordinary safety of being just a civilian. But something deeper, the fire that had drawn her to planes, to mechanics, to flight itself, refused to be silenced. She inhaled sharply, squaring her shoulders. She was about to step into a world she had only dreamed of, a world that didn't acknowledge civilians, a world where one wrong move could be fatal. And yet, she had no choice now. From across the tarmac, the two F-22s peeled off, forming a tight, threatening V. Their movements were precise, almost predatory. Clara felt the weight of their scrutiny, the collective gaze of pilots trained to detect even the smallest anomalies. And then, in the silence that followed the deafening roar, a single thought crystallized in her mind. If she failed, no one would know she had even tried. But if she succeeded, everything would change. A sudden gust of wind swept across the airfield, tugging at her hoodie, sending loose papers skittering like frightened birds. Her duffel bag slipped slightly from her shoulder, and in that fraction of a second the technician stepped forward, shaking his head. "This is insane. You can't," he stopped, eyes widening as a jet screamed overhead, banking sharply, almost impossibly, and the two pilots' visors reflected the same name she had spoken. Eagle One. And then it happened. The jets aligned, engines screaming, poised like predators over the airfield. Every pilot, every crew member froze for an instant, their attention drawn to the civilian in front of them. Clara's pulse raced, blood pounding in her ears. She had crossed an invisible boundary, one that no civilian had ever dared approach. Yet here she was. And in that tense heartbeat of a moment, one question hung over the tarmac like a storm cloud. Who was this Eagle One? And how had she claimed a name that even the most elite pilots whispered with awe? The air around Clara seemed to vibrate with tension, the low hum of idling jets now a throbbing heartbeat in her ears. The F-22s hovered in formation, engines screaming, as though sensing the presence of someone who didn't belong, but somehow commanded respect. The two pilots, silhouetted against the rising sun, stared at her from within their visors. She was a civilian, nothing more, yet in a way that defied logic they knew her. "Eagle One, confirm identity," came the voice again, calm yet edged with authority. Clara's hands tightened around her duffel bag, knuckles whitening. Every fiber of her body screamed that she should run, hide, vanish into the anonymity of ordinary life. But she couldn't. Not now. Not after months of preparation, study, and a secret obsession with flight that had consumed every spare hour of her life. I'm Clara Hayes," she said, voice trembling slightly, yet steadied by the intensity of the moment. "I know you're not expecting me, but I've studied every manual, every emergency procedure. I can help." She swallowed, aware of how fragile her position was. One wrong word, one misstep, and the tarmac could explode in chaos, either from the pilot's reaction or her own mistakes. The two F-22 pilots glanced at each other, visors reflecting mirrored uncertainty. One leaned slightly toward the other, their silent communication almost imperceptible but unmistakable in its tension. Recognition, shock, disbelief, each emotion flashed across their faces in rapid succession. Then slowly, the pilot closest to Clara tilted his head, a gesture almost imperceptible but loaded with meaning. "Eagle One," he murmured, as if tasting the name for the first time in years. "It can't be." His voice trailed off, the words unfinished but heavy with implication. Clara's heart skipped a beat. How could they know her? She had kept her identity secret, using the call sign only in the most private corners of her simulated flights. No one in the real world should have recognized it. And yet here it was, echoing across the tarmac with deadly precision. The second pilot's hand hovered near his helmet, fingers twitching nervously. "If this is real, we need to verify," he muttered. His gaze didn't leave her, scanning her stance, her gear, the duffel bag that hinted at tools far beyond the usual civilian range. Clara felt exposed, every detail of her preparation now visible to people trained to spot anomalies instantly. Her stomach churned, a mixture of fear and adrenaline. "Verification," Clara whispered almost to herself. I can prove it." She took a deep breath, stepping closer to the comm station. Around her, the technicians and crew had frozen, watching the drama unfold like a live wire crackling with tension. No one moved, no one breathed. The very air seemed to hum with anticipation. The first pilot's voice crackled over the intercom again, sharp, demanding. "Show us, Eagle One. Show us you're not a liability." Clara's fingers trembled, brushing against the first piece of equipment she had brought, an emergency flight control kit she had memorized and assembled herself. She laid it out methodically on a maintenance table, each tool in its precise position, every component verified against the schematics she had studied endlessly. The pilot's visors tracked her movements, unblinking. Their formation shifted slightly, engines whining as though adjusting to her pace, their awareness almost sentient. Clara's heart hammered. One misplacement, one hesitation, and the entire demonstration would collapse. She swallowed her fear and began the procedure she had rehearsed hundreds of times in simulations. She synchronized switches, monitored readings, and manually verified each system with a precision that belied her civilian status. Minutes stretched like hours. Then one of the pilots tilted his head, a subtle nod barely visible through his visor. Clara caught the gesture and drew a shaky breath. She was being acknowledged, not yet trusted but seen. In that acknowledgement was a flicker of hope and a spark of danger, because now there was no going back. Suddenly, alarms blared from the hangar. A maintenance crew member shouted, voice shrill over the din, pointing toward one of the F-22s in the distance. Clara's stomach lurched. The jet had experienced a hydraulic pressure drop, a critical failure that could ground it instantly, or worse, trigger a catastrophic incident during flight. All eyes snapped toward the malfunctioning aircraft. The pilots' faces hardened, expressions masked by the reflective visors, yet the urgency was palpable. Clara's training or obsession kicked in. She didn't hesitate. Without waiting for instructions, she rushed toward the affected jet, duffel bag clutched tightly. Her mind raced through every procedure she had memorized, every emergency step she had visualized countless times. Around her, the airfield seemed to blur into insignificance. Only the F-22, the critical failure, and her hands moving with precision existed. The nearest pilot's voice cut sharply through the chaos. "What are you doing, civilian? Step back." But she didn't. She opened the panel with practiced skill, fingers sliding over hydraulic lines, checking pressures, recalibrating sensors. Her pulse raced, adrenaline surging, every heartbeat synchronized with the mechanical rhythm of the jet. She could feel the eyes of the elite pilots boring into her back, assessing, judging, measuring her competence against years of their own experience. "Eagle One," the first pilot muttered again, this time with awe creeping into his voice. Clara didn't have time to savor it. She focused on the hydraulics, rerouting pressure valves, adjusting manual overrides, stabilizing the system with a deftness that even seasoned mechanics would find impressive. Sparks flew, alarms beeped, the jet trembled under her hands, but she persisted. Then, as she finished the final adjustment, the hydraulic system stabilized. The warning lights extinguished one by one, leaving only the low hum of operational readiness. Clara stepped back, chest heaving, sweat streaking her face. Around her, the airfield erupted, not in cheers, but in stunned silence, the kind that only comes when the impossible has been witnessed firsthand. The two F-22 pilots hovered nearby, visors reflecting the sunlight, silent, measuring, processing. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the first pilot raised a gloved hand in acknowledgement. "Eagle One, you're real," he said, voice quiet, reverent. The second pilot exhaled sharply, tension leaving his shoulders in a controlled motion. Recognition. Validation. A civilian had just solved a problem that could have grounded the squadron, and she had done it under the scrutiny of America's most elite pilots. But just as Clara allowed herself a fraction of relief, a new sound tore through the morning calm. The base radar crackled violently, a high-priority alert flashing across every console. The technicians shouted, and the pilots' visors reflected the same alarm. An unidentified aircraft had entered restricted airspace at high speed. The words barely registered before the first pilot barked into the radio. "All units scramble. Eagle 1, follow me." Clara froze. Her heart skipped. Follow her. In what world would a civilian, someone completely untested, be ordered to follow elite F-22 pilots into a potentially hostile situation? Fear collided with adrenaline, leaving her momentarily paralyzed. Yet there was no hesitation from the pilots, their confidence implicit, their trust unspoken but absolute. Clara looked at the formation of jets roaring to life, engines screaming like caged thunder. She glanced at her duffel bag, the tool kit, and the system she had just stabilized. She was a civilian, yes, but for the first time the pilots weren't treating her like one. And in that moment, the invisible line separating ordinary life from extraordinary destiny vanished. Her mind raced with questions. Who had sent the unknown aircraft? What were the pilots seeing that she couldn't yet comprehend? Could she survive if things went wrong at 30,000 feet? And most importantly, did she even belong in this world, this skybound theater of speed, danger, and secrecy? The first pilot's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts again, calm yet commanding. "Eagle 1, lock in formation. We're going hot." And in that instant, as the ground disappeared beneath her feet and the roar of the jets engulfed her, Clara realized there was no turning back. She was no longer just a civilian. She had crossed the line, and the sky had claimed her. But even as the horizon rushed toward her, a shiver ran down her spine. The unknown aircraft wasn't just intruding, it was fast, precise, and, most chilling of all, aware of them. Someone somewhere was waiting, watching. And the first words she had uttered on the tarmac, the name Eagle 1, were about to draw her into a confrontation that could cost more than her freedom. The sky above the Nevada test range was a swirl of gold and steel, the desert beneath stretching endlessly, a harsh contrast to the chaos erupting in the clouds above. Clara's chest burned with a mixture of fear and exhilaration as she climbed into the rear support jet, her duffel bag now secured, systems manuals stashed in memory for emergencies she hoped would never arrive. Yet she had no choice. The radar was screaming, and the unknown aircraft was closing fast, moving with calculated precision. The F-22 pilots had already taken formation, sleek shadows cutting through the dawn light, their engines tearing through the silence like predators in pursuit. Clara followed the lead pilot's instructions over the comms, fingers hovering over auxiliary controls she had only read about in manuals. She wasn't trained for combat. She wasn't supposed to be here. But instinct, honed through months of simulation, demanded action. "Eagle 1, maintain visual on your lead," the first pilot commanded. His voice was calm but hard, authoritative, the kind that brooked no argument. Clara's eyes darted forward, scanning the horizon, where a metallic blur rippled against the sunrise. The intruding aircraft moved unnervingly like a shadow, banking and twisting with uncanny agility. It wasn't just fast, it was anticipating every maneuver the Raptors executed. Her stomach knotted. This wasn't a training exercise. It was an unknown adversary, an entity capable of thinking faster than the most advanced artificial intelligence. Clara's hands shook slightly as she adjusted her throttle, trying to keep pace. The duffel bag at her side felt impossibly heavy, as though it carried the weight of the lives now depending on her. She swallowed hard and focused. Simulation would not help here. Only real skill, real instinct, and nerves of steel would. "Known aircraft bearing 075 closing fast," the second pilot reported, tone clipped, eyes hidden but their focus obvious. "Eagle 1, adjust altitude 300 feet higher, vector northeast. I need you tight on my wing." Clara's heart leapt. Wing position was critical. Even a slight error could destabilize the formation or make her an easy target. She pushed forward, breathing shallow, eyes fixed on the sleek lead jet ahead, trusting him entirely while the unknown threat loomed closer. The unknown aircraft flashed again, a sudden burst of speed that made Clara's stomach drop. It wasn't just agile, it was deliberate, tracking them, probing weaknesses, testing reactions. Every pilot's training on the ground came into play at once. Clara's hands tightened on the throttle, each adjustment minute but life-saving. The F-22s ahead twisted in synchronized choreography, engines screaming, shadows of metal streaking across the morning sky. "Eagle 1, you're holding too tight," the lead pilot snapped, urgency in his tone. Clara adjusted slightly, heart racing, knowing any hesitation could be fatal. Sweat ran down her temple, stinging her eyes, but she didn't dare blink. The unknown aircraft was a threat unlike anything she had encountered, and yet she felt an odd thrill, an understanding that the rules she had learned in manuals and simulations were finally being tested in the raw crucible of reality. Suddenly, a warning light blinked on her console, minor hydraulic instability. Clara's stomach dropped, but she kept her hands steady, recalling the fixes she had just performed on the tarmac earlier that morning. "Adjust valve C12, she muttered under her breath, fingers moving faster than she thought possible. The lead pilot glanced back and she met his gaze through the visor. The smallest nod passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of trust. The unknown aircraft was relentless. It darted from side to side, probing their formation with surgical precision. Clara's mind raced, calculating every maneuver, every potential evasive action, while keeping her position exactly where it needed to be. One miscalculation would put the entire squadron and herself in immediate danger. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Time seemed to stretch and compress at once. "Eagle 1, do you see the signal?" the lead pilot asked sharply. Clara followed the line of sight and caught a faint electronic signature flickering across her HUD. It was a targeting system, unfamiliar and advanced. Whoever or whatever was piloting that aircraft was not human, or at least not one trained by conventional standards. The realization hit her. This was beyond anything the base had anticipated. This was not a test. This was combat, pure and unfiltered. A sudden jolt shook her jet. The unknown aircraft had fired a warning flare, cutting across their path in a blaze of light. Clara's stomach lurched as the heat warning alarms blared. She reacted instantly, banking hard, following the lead pilot through a hairpin turn that forced the intruder to overshoot. Heart hammering, she realized the Raptor's agility was matched only by her ability to stay calm under impossible pressure. The first pilot's voice cut through the chaos again, steady and commanding. "Eagle 1, hold formation. Trust your instincts. We've got you." Clara's chest swelled with a strange mix of fear and determination. She wasn't just a civilian anymore. She was a part of something larger than herself, a critical node in a high-speed, high-stakes game of life and death. But then something unexpected happened. The unknown aircraft broke formation, accelerating directly toward the lead pilot. Clara's breath caught. In an instant, everything she had learned, every procedure memorized, every calculation performed had to be applied perfectly. She pushed the throttle forward, fingers moving on autopilot, matching speed and trajectory. The jets twisted in a deadly ballet, engines screaming, shadows racing across the clouds. A flare exploded near the lead pilot, a searing burst that made Clara flinch. The intruder had him in its sights, and for the first time fear gripped her, not just for herself, but for the pilots who had, in moments, come to trust her. She clenched her jaw, instincts screaming, calculating the timing, speed, and angle of approach. One wrong move and it could be catastrophic. "Eagle 1 now," the lead pilot barked. Clara responded instantly, cutting throttle, banking sharply, and positioning herself between the unknown aircraft and her fellow pilot. The intruder hesitated for a split second, a hesitation that could decide life or death. Clara adjusted her jet, stabilizing the formation, eyes locked on every movement. It was a dangerous gamble, but one she was trained for, mentally if not officially. The unknown aircraft recoiled, overshooting its mark, giving the lead pilot just enough room to maneuver. Clara exhaled sharply, adrenaline still surging, body trembling but controlled. She had just prevented what could have been a fatal engagement. And yet, even as the immediate danger receded, another reality hit. She wasn't just a helper anymore. She was a participant, and the sky had just escalated into a battlefield she barely understood. "Eagle 1, the lead pilot muttered, calm but awed. "You just saved my life." Clara's throat tightened. She had never imagined a civilian could be acknowledged in such a way by someone trained to perfection, someone whose life depended on split-second decisions. Yet here it was, her name, her call sign, spoken aloud not in simulation, but in raw, unfiltered reality. And then, just as the jets regained stability, a new blip appeared on their HUDs, fast, low, unidentified, another intruder, or perhaps the same one regrouped, now with intent. The F-22 formation tensed, engines screaming, shadows sharpening. Clara felt her pulse spike again. Her hands were steady, her mind sharp, but one truth crystallized in the back of her mind. The danger wasn't over, not by a long shot. The voice of the lead pilot cut through the roar, calm but urgent. "Eagle 1, you ready for round 2? Her stomach dropped, but she nodded, even though he couldn't see it. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a simulation. The real danger, the real sky, was about to test her in ways she had never imagined. And as the unknown aircraft's radar signature grew brighter, closer, more threatening, Clara realized the truth. She had crossed a line. There was no turning back. She was no longer just a civilian. She was now part of a deadly aerial ballet, and every move she made could be the difference between life and death. The F-22s banked sharply, engines roaring, shadows streaking across the dawn-lit clouds, and Clara felt the exhilarating, terrifying reality of it all. The sky had claimed her, and the unknown adversary was about to make sure she never forgot it. The sky had turned into a battlefield. Clouds swirled like smoke over a desert fire, painted gold and crimson by the rising sun. Clara's hands gripped the throttle tightly, knuckles white, eyes darting across the HUD. The F-22s were in full formation, engines screaming in a symphony of power, shadows slicing through the clouds. Every second counted. The unknown aircraft was fast, precise, and lethal, its radar signature growing closer, more aggressive with every heartbeat. Clara's chest burned with adrenaline and fear. She had trained for emergencies, studied every procedure, every simulation, but nothing had prepared her for this. The chaos of real aerial combat, where life and death hung on split-second decisions. Her duffel bag, heavy with tools and manuals, pressed against her side like a reminder of her untested civilian status. Yet she couldn't falter. Not now. The lead pilot's voice cut sharply through the comms. "Eagle 1, maintain formation. We're making the intercept. Eyes sharp." Clara nodded, though he couldn't see it. She adjusted her throttle, matching the Raptor's maneuvers, banking sharply, feeling the G-forces press against her chest. The unknown aircraft darted again, testing their formation, probing for weaknesses. Every pilot instinct she had absorbed, every scenario she had imagined, was now being tested in real time. "Unknown craft, bearing 090, the second pilot reported. His voice was clipped, calm, but tension laced every word. Clara felt the vibration of engines beneath her, felt the sheer power of the F-22 responding to her inputs. She had to stay steady, precise, focused. One mistake could compromise the entire squadron. She stole a glance at the duffel bag again. Every tool, every manual she carried was useless here. Now it was skill, nerve, and instinct that mattered. The intruder fired another warning flare, slicing across their formation in a brilliant streak of red and orange. Clara's stomach lurched as alarms screamed across her console. The F-22s responded with flawless coordination, banking sharply, engines wailing, the shadowy intruder forced to overshoot. She followed every maneuver instinctively, wings aligning perfectly, matching the lead pilot's movements. Her civilian status felt irrelevant, meaningless. She had become part of the formation, part of the fight. "Eagle 1, we need eyes on it," the lead pilot barked. Clara scanned the horizon, heart hammering, and caught the faint glint of metallic movement far ahead. The unknown aircraft's speed was terrifying, yet there was an intelligence in its trajectory, predicting moves, testing reactions, calculating responses. Clara's pulse raced. Whoever or whatever was piloting this craft was skilled, trained, and patient. Mistakes would be punished instantly. Suddenly, the unknown aircraft shifted, diving in a steep spiral coming in behind the lead pilot. Clara's stomach dropped. Her pulse spiked. The intruder was aggressive, targeting the lead with lethal precision. Without thinking, she banked hard, positioning herself between them. Her hands moved with mechanical precision, throttle and aileron synchronized, guiding her jet like an extension of her own body. The intruder hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough for the lead to evade. "Good move, Eagle One," the pilot muttered, almost in disbelief. Clara's chest heaved, sweat streaking her face. She hadn't thought about praise, there wasn't time, but the acknowledgement sent a shiver through her. They trusted her, not as a civilian but as a pilot in this high-stakes, deadly dance. Yet relief was fleeting. The intruder wasn't retreating, it was circling, calculating, preparing for another strike. Her HUD flashed a new alert, missile lock. Clara's stomach knotted. The intruder wasn't just testing them, it intended to strike. Time slowed as she processed the data, speed, trajectory, distance. Panic nudged at her edges, but she forced it down, focusing on the calculations her mind could handle. Every second mattered. Every wrong move could trigger catastrophe. She inhaled sharply, recalling every simulation, every emergency procedure, every late night she had spent imagining this exact moment. The lead pilot's voice was steady but urgent. "Eagle One, adjust vector 30 degrees starboard, deploy countermeasures." Clara reacted instantly, her hands moving on autopilot, releasing flares to divert the incoming missile. The warning light on her HUD blared, alarm screaming, but the missile veered off course, missing its mark by mere meters. Clara's heart raced. She had done it, saved herself and the lead pilot, but she barely had time to breathe before the intruder struck again. It dove again, faster this time, banking with terrifying precision. Clara followed the lead, banking sharply, engines screaming. The F-22s twisted in synchronized choreography, every maneuver a deadly dance. Her stomach churned, but she remained focused, calculating angles, speeds, distances. The unknown aircraft probed again and again, each pass more aggressive than the last. Clara realized this wasn't just a test, it was a hunt, and she was now fully part of it. Then, unexpectedly, the intruder deployed electronic countermeasures, jamming communications and radar briefly. The comms crackled, pilots shouting coordinates and warnings. Clara's pulse thundered in her ears. She had to rely on instinct alone, on visual cues, on sheer gut reaction. The sky became a blur of metal and cloud, engines roaring, flares streaking, shadows weaving. Every maneuver tested her nerves, her reflexes, her resolve. "Eagle One, stay tight on my wing," the lead barked, voice tense but controlled. Clara obeyed instantly, positioning herself perfectly despite the chaos. The intruder's approach grew more calculated, more threatening. She could feel the weight of the mission pressing down, the lives of her fellow pilots, the integrity of the formation, the unseen consequences of any mistake. Fear gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. There was no room for hesitation. A sudden flash streaked across the sky. The intruder had fired a missile. Clara's chest constricted. Alarm screamed. Without thinking, she released flares again, banking hard to evade. The missile veered off but narrowly missed the lead. Clara's stomach lurched as she realized the intruder's intent. It wasn't just a challenge. It was a test of survival, skill, nerve. Every moment was a battle. The lead pilot's voice cut sharply. "Eagle One, this is it. We're going in for a close intercept. Follow my lead. Eyes sharp. Execute perfectly." Clara swallowed hard, adrenaline spiking, heart hammering. She adjusted her throttle, banked into formation, positioning herself with absolute precision. The intruder's movements became a deadly puzzle, each maneuver a piece she had to anticipate and counter. Her mind raced, heart thundering, body straining against the forces of speed and gravity. She realized the truth. She wasn't just surviving, she was contributing. Her decisions, her instincts, her actions mattered. She was no longer a civilian observing from the sidelines. She was part of the fight, and if she faltered, the consequences would be catastrophic. The intruder twisted again, banking sharply for another attack run. Clara held her breath, hands steady, eyes sharp. The F-22 formation responded, engines screaming, shadows streaking across the dawnlit clouds. And then in a heartbeat, the intruder broke away, abrupt, sudden, as if testing them before retreating. Clara exhaled sharply, tension flooding out of her body, only to realize the danger wasn't over. The lead pilot's voice, calm but edged with awe, crackled over the comms. "Eagle One, you handled that flawlessly, but this isn't over. They'll be back." Clara's pulse raced. She had survived the first strike, proven herself under fire, but a lingering shiver ran down her spine. The intruder had retreated for now, but it was only a matter of time before it returned. And when it did, the stakes would be higher. She glanced at the lead pilot through her visor. His expression, though hidden, radiated respect. For the first time in her life, Clara felt a mix of pride, fear, and belonging that was overwhelming. She wasn't just a civilian anymore. She was Eagle One. And the sky, the deadly, untamed, unforgiving sky, had claimed her as one of its own. But as the formation leveled and the desert stretched below, Clara's gut tightened. The unknown aircraft hadn't just challenged them, it had marked them. And the next encounter would be far more dangerous, far more personal, and far less forgiving. The words echoed in her mind as she clenched her jaw, eyes scanning the horizon. "Eagle One, they'll be back. And when they do, you'll have no choice but to fight." The desert stretched far below, a pale canvas for the high-speed ballet unfolding above. Clara's heart pounded in sync with the engines, each beat a reminder that she was no longer a civilian. She was Eagle One now, integrated into a formation of the Air Force's most elite F-22 pilots, and every decision she made could tip the balance between life and death. The radar crackled again. The unknown aircraft had returned, faster, more precise, and more threatening than before. Clara's stomach knotted. The previous encounter had been a test. This one was deliberate, aggressive. Every pilot in the formation stiffened, instinct and training guiding them toward an immediate response. "Eagle One, we're initiating a split maneuver," the lead pilot called. "You follow my lead. Eyes sharp. Timing is everything." Clara's fingers gripped the throttle, thumbs dancing over auxiliary controls. She had practiced evasive maneuvers in simulations, but never under real pressure, never with lives hanging in the balance. Her pulse soared, adrenaline flooding her veins. The formation twisted as one, banking sharply. Clara mirrored the lead pilot, eyes scanning the horizon for any hint of the intruder. Then, like a shadow unleashed from the clouds, the unknown aircraft appeared again, deadly, silent, calculating. It moved in ways she had never anticipated, almost anticipating every evasive maneuver before it happened. "Eagle One, you're on your own for this run," the lead pilot barked. Clara's chest tightened. Solo, she had trained for emergencies, but this was combat, real lethal combat. She inhaled sharply, steadying her hands, eyes narrowing. Fear threatened to overtake her, but she forced it down. The sky demanded precision, and hesitation could be fatal. The intruder dove toward her at breakneck speed, a sleek shadow slicing through the dawn. Clara adjusted her throttle, banking sharply to evade, flares streaking in her wake. The unknown craft twisted, banking in impossible angles, testing her reflexes, her instincts. Every muscle in her body screamed, every thought calculated, every decision critical. "Eagle One, remember your training, trust your instincts." The comms crackled. Clara's mind raced. Simulation had prepared her for split-second calculations, emergency procedures, and system overrides, but never for the unpredictability of a living, breathing adversary. She banked again, narrowly avoiding a missile lock, feeling the G-forces press against her chest like a vice. The intruder circled, testing her again and again, forcing her into maneuvers that strained her body and mind. She remembered the manuals, the hours spent memorizing hydraulics, flight controls, and emergency responses. But now it was instinct that mattered. Reaction time, spatial awareness, and precision dictated survival. Each pass of the unknown aircraft increased the stakes, each maneuver a delicate balance between control and chaos. Clara's HUD lit up with incoming warnings. Missile lock, system overload. She gritted her teeth, pushing the jet to its limits. The F-22's power responded instantly to her commands, engines screaming, shadows of clouds and metal streaking past. She released countermeasures, deployed flares, and executed a sudden roll, narrowly evading the intruder's attack. Her stomach lurched as the enemy overshot, giving her a brief reprieve, but she knew it wouldn't last. A sudden flash of movement caught her eye. The intruder banked sharply, firing a high-velocity missile aimed at her lead pilot. Clara's mind clicked instantly. She couldn't afford to just survive, she had to protect her team. She veered sharply, intercepting the missile's trajectory with calculated precision. The countermeasure worked. The missile veered off, missing its target by mere meters. Her pulse raced, heart hammering in her chest. She had just saved a life. The lead pilot's voice came over the comms, clipped, almost incredulous. "Eagle 1, impressive, that was perfect." Clara didn't have time to respond. The intruder was back, faster, closer, circling again, preparing for a strike more aggressive than before. Her chest tightened, her body trembling under the tension, but fear was useless here. She had to act. She banked sharply, executing a series of evasive maneuvers she had only ever visualized in simulation. The unknown aircraft followed, relentless, intelligent, almost prescient in its attacks. Each pass tested her focus, her nerves, her ability to anticipate its next move. She realized that this was no longer just a threat. It was a chess game played at supersonic speed, and she was forced into the center of the board. Clara's vision narrowed, focusing entirely on the intruder. She adjusted her throttle, fine-tuned her trajectory, deployed flares in precise intervals. The unknown craft misjudged her final maneuver, overshooting for the first time. Relief surged, fleeting but powerful. She had created a small opening, a tiny advantage, but there was no time to celebrate. The intruder was recalibrating, and the next strike would be deadlier. Sweat streaked her face, body trembling under the pressure, yet her mind remained razor-sharp. Every instinct, every memory, every lesson she had absorbed became critical. She wasn't a civilian anymore. She wasn't just learning. She was fighting, surviving, excelling under pressure, and earning the unspoken trust of pilots who had once doubted her. The intruder darted in again, banking impossibly, missiles locked, engines screaming. Clara reacted instantly, banking, diving, releasing flares, her body pressed against the controls as if it were an extension of her will. The countermeasures worked, diverting the missile just enough to save her lead. The formation adjusted, engines howling in response to her movements. Then abruptly the intruder disengaged, pulling up sharply into the clouds and disappearing from radar. Clara's chest heaved, adrenaline flooding her veins. The immediate threat had passed, but she knew it was temporary. Whoever, or whatever, was piloting that aircraft had tested her, probed her limits, and found her competent. The lead pilot's voice cut through the comms again, calm but laced with respect. "Eagle 1, you did exceptionally. You kept your composure, executed maneuvers flawlessly, and protected the team. That was above and beyond anything we could have expected." Clara's chest swelled, but pride was fleeting. She knew the intruder hadn't finished. This was a test, yes, but the real battle was only beginning. She glanced down at the desert below, the tarmac now a distant memory, and felt the full weight of the skis above. She wasn't a civilian anymore. She was Eagle 1, an integral part of a deadly aerial ballet. Her hands shook slightly, adrenaline still coursing through her veins, but her mind was clear. She had survived, she had excelled, and she had earned her place in the formation. Yet deep in her gut, she knew the intruder hadn't just attacked, they had marked them. This wasn't a one-time encounter. It was a message. And next time the stakes would be higher, the danger sharper, and the consequences potentially catastrophic. As the formation leveled, engines screaming, Clara allowed herself a brief moment of clarity. She was no longer just an observer. She was part of this high-speed, high-stakes world, trusted by pilots who had once dismissed her. And in that trust, in that recognition, she found a flicker of belonging, even as the shadow of future danger loomed over the horizon. Her pulse slowed only slightly, but her eyes never left the sky. Eagle 1 had survived the first solo engagement, but the question lingered, gnawing at her mind. Who or what was the intruder, and what would happen when it returned? The desert stretched endlessly below, the clouds above shifting in gold and crimson. And in that infinite expanse of sky, Clara realized the truth. There was no turning back. She had crossed a line, she had embraced the sky. And the sky would demand everything she had to give. The sky had transformed into a turbulent battlefield. Clouds churned like smoke above the Nevada desert, painted gold and red by the early sun. Clara's chest heaved, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She gripped the throttle of her F-22, knuckles white, eyes scanning the horizon. The unknown aircraft was back, and this time it wasn't just testing, they were attacking. The lead pilot's voice cut sharply through the comms. Eagle One, hold tight. They're coordinated, 2 targets, multiple vectors. Stay on formation, trust your instincts. Timing is everything. Clara swallowed hard, her fingers dancing across the controls, fine-tuning throttle, banking, and flares. The unknown intruders moved with preternatural precision, anticipating every maneuver the Raptors executed. Her stomach twisted. She had survived solo maneuvers before, but this was different. 2 unknown craft, fast, lethal, and intelligent, converging from multiple directions. She could see them on her HUD, blurs of metallic gray, weaving through clouds like predatory shadows. Every second demanded life-or-death decisions. One miscalculation could mean catastrophe. Eagle One, altitude adjustment 500 feet. Vector northwest, the second pilot commanded. Clara obeyed instantly, trusting her instincts and training. The formation twisted, engines screaming, shadows slicing through the clouds in a deadly aerial ballet. The intruders adjusted their flight paths, mirroring their movements with alarming accuracy. She realized with chilling clarity, these aircraft weren't just aggressive, they were calculating, studying, hunting. A sudden warning blared on her console. Missile lock, her pulse spiked. Without hesitation, Clara released countermeasures, flares streaking out in precise intervals. The missile veered off, narrowly missing her wingtip. The lead pilot's voice came again, calm but urgent. Eagle One, intercept the second target. You have a window, act now. Clara's mind raced. This was beyond simulation, beyond training manuals. She was living in a high-speed, lethal puzzle where instincts and precision were the only currency. She banked sharply, accelerating toward the second intruder. The aircraft twisted and darted, trying to evade her approach, but she anticipated its movements, her actions a combination of learned skill and raw intuition. The intruder fired again, high-velocity projectiles streaking past her canopy. Clara's stomach dropped. She deployed flares and executed a sudden roll, narrowly avoiding the attack. Each maneuver strained her body, pressed her limits, and tested her mind. But she stayed focused, aware that any hesitation could end in disaster. She was no longer a civilian, she was part of the fight. The first pilot's voice came again, clipped and tense. Eagle One, you've got this. Lead's counting on you. Don't lose your focus. Clara felt a strange surge of determination. Fear still gnawed at the edges, but trust, earned in the previous encounters, gave her clarity. She adjusted her trajectory, closing in on the intruder with calculated precision. Suddenly, the second unknown aircraft dove, targeting the lead pilot directly. Clara reacted instantly, banking hard to intercept, positioning herself between the threat and the Raptor she had saved before. Her movements were flawless, a mix of instinct, experience, and adrenaline. The missile fired, and she deployed countermeasures just in time. The lead pilot banked sharply, narrowly avoiding catastrophe. "Good work, Eagle One," the pilot muttered over comms, barely audible above the roar of engines. But there was no time to savor the praise. The intruders weren't retreating. They circled again, coordinating their attack with ruthless efficiency. Clara's chest tightened. This was no longer a challenge, it was a coordinated hunt. She had to think faster, act sharper, and trust herself more than ever. Her HUD flashed new warnings: minor system overload, fuel imbalance. Her hands moved on instinct, adjusting controls, stabilizing the jet. Every muscle ached under the G-forces, but she couldn't falter. The intruders moved in unison, testing her, testing the formation, and testing the limits of human and machine alike. Eagle 1 split formation maneuver, the lead pilot ordered. Clara's mind clicked into high gear. She executed the split, twisting and banking, weaving through clouds like a shadow. The intruders followed, relentless, adapting to every adjustment. Her stomach churned, adrenaline surging, mind calculating angles, speeds, and trajectories. Every second could mean survival or disaster. Then it happened. The intruder split its attack, one craft diving toward Clara while the other targeted the lead. Time slowed. Instinct took over. Clara executed a sudden roll, avoiding the incoming missile, while maintaining her trajectory to intercept the other. Flares streaked behind her, a brilliant display against the crimson clouds. She could feel the Raptor respond to her movements as if it were an extension of her own body. The first pilot barked over comms, urgency in his voice. Eagle 1 now, lock and engage the intruder. Precision is critical. Clara's pulse surged. She lined up the intruder in her targeting system, calculating speed, distance, and trajectory. Her finger hovered over the fire button. One wrong move and she could miss, or worse, hit the wrong target. She fired. The missile streaked out, engine blazing, tracking the intruder with deadly accuracy. The target veered, attempting evasive maneuvers, but Clara's calculation held. The missile struck with precision, forcing the intruder into a rapid climb, breaking its attack pattern. Clara exhaled sharply, adrenaline still surging. She had done it. She had altered the course of the attack. The second intruder attempted a retreat, banking sharply into the clouds, but the formation gave chase. Clara followed, heart hammering, body straining, nerves razor-sharp. The desert below blurred into insignificance as speed and gravity became her reality. She was no longer just surviving. She was fighting, protecting, and proving herself in a domain that had once seemed utterly out of reach. A sudden warning blared again. System overheating. Fuel imbalance critical. Clara's chest tightened. The F-22's limits were being pushed. She adjusted controls, throttled carefully, stabilizing systems while maintaining formation. The intruders were retreating, but for how long? Clara knew this was a pause, not an end. The hunt would resume, sharper, deadlier, with stakes even higher. The lead pilot's voice came over comms, calm but edged with tension. Eagle 1, you held your own. That was exceptional, but they're not done. They'll return, and next time they'll be smarter. Clara's chest heaved. She had survived the coordinated attack, proven herself in solo maneuvers, and earned the trust of the pilots. But the shadow of the intruders loomed large, a threat that had yet to reveal its full intent. She glanced at the lead pilot through her visor, catching a fleeting reflection of respect, and a silent acknowledgement that she had crossed a boundary no civilian had ever crossed. She was Eagle 1, and the sky, the lethal, untamed sky, had claimed her. But deep in her gut, a chill ran down her spine. The intruders hadn't just attacked, they had marked her. They were intelligent, adaptive, and ruthless. And the next engagement would demand everything she had: skill, courage, instinct, and perhaps more than even the most elite pilots possessed. As the formation leveled, engines roaring, clouds parting to reveal the desert below, Clara realized the truth. There was no turning back. She had crossed the line. The hunt was just beginning, and the sky would demand everything she had to survive. The Nevada sky was no longer a backdrop. It was a crucible. Clouds roiled overhead, shadows streaking across the desert floor as Clara gripped the throttle, body pressed into the cockpit, eyes scanning every angle for the threat she knew was still out there. The intruders had vanished for now, but the lead pilot's warning echoed in her mind. They would return, and next time with lethal intent. Eagle 1 maintained formation. They're coordinating at high speed, the lead pilot said, voice tight, clipped. Clara's chest heaved. The first coordinated strike had tested her instincts. The solo maneuvers had pushed her to her limits. But now she knew the intruders weren't just challenging them, they were hunting. Every pilot instinct, every reaction, every calculation mattered. Failure wasn't an option. Her hands danced across the controls, throttles, ailerons, and flares. The HUD blinked with incoming radar alerts, multiple contacts, faster than anything she had ever tracked. Clara's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain focused. Fear was a tool, a motivator, but it could not control her. Her mind clicked through scenarios, recalling every simulation, every procedure she had studied in secret. Suddenly, a streak of metal flashed across the horizon. One intruder was back, banking sharply, weapons locked on formation. Clara reacted instantly, banking hard, releasing flares. The missile veered just enough to avoid disaster. Her stomach lurched, adrenaline spiking. This wasn't practice. This was life or death, pure and raw, and the intruder's intelligence was unnerving. "Eagle 1, you're clear, take lead for intercept," the lead pilot barked. Clara's heart skipped. Take the lead. She inhaled sharply, muscles tensing. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she had to make decisions that affected the formation. Every maneuver had consequences. Every split-second choice could be fatal. Yet something inside her, the training, the obsession, the need to prove herself, propelled her forward. The second intruder appeared, banking in from above, cutting off potential escape paths. Clara's mind raced. She had to coordinate her movements with the remaining pilots, anticipate the intruder's maneuvers, and keep the formation intact. Her fingers flew across the controls, micro-adjusting throttle, pitch, and yaw. The jets responded instantly, a symphony of precision and speed, shadows weaving through clouds like liquid steel. "Eagle 1, target the high-speed vector. Leads following your maneuver," the lead pilot instructed. Clara adjusted her flight path, eyes narrowing, tracking the intruder through the HUD. The unknown aircraft twisted violently, banking in ways that seemed impossible, testing the limits of human reflexes. Clara responded with split-second precision, predicting its trajectory, anticipating its next move. Suddenly, an alert blared, missile lock 3 incoming. Her pulse skyrocketed, Clara's stomach dropped. She released countermeasures, flares streaking in perfect timing, narrowly diverting 2 of the missiles. The third required a sudden dive and roll, pushing the F-22 to extreme limits. Sweat stung her eyes, muscles screamed under G-forces, but she maintained control. She was no longer a civilian. She was a fighter, a pilot, part of the lethal rhythm of the squadron. The intruder split its attack, one craft diving toward the lead pilot, the other toward Clara. Time seemed to stretch. Her instincts, honed through months of secret preparation, took over. She banked hard, intercepting the missile aimed at the lead, releasing flares with perfect timing. Engines roared in response, shadows streaking across the clouds, a deadly ballet in full motion. The lead pilot's voice cut sharply over comms. "Eagle 1, you're doing incredible. Hold it together, this is the ultimate test." Clara's chest tightened. Ultimate test. The words reverberated in her mind. She had survived solo maneuvers, coordinated attacks, and high-speed intercepts, but this was different. This demanded everything: skill, nerve, strategy, and courage she didn't know she possessed. She tracked the intruders, calculating speed, trajectory, distance. The second missile fired at her again. Clara banked sharply, deploying flares, twisting the F-22 like an extension of her own body. The intruder hesitated, overshot, giving her just enough opening. She lined up the attack vector, fire control primed, heart hammering. She had a chance to force them into retreat. Then it happened. The lead intruder executed a near-impossible maneuver, banking vertically, accelerating with terrifying precision. Clara adjusted, muscles straining, mind calculating angles in milliseconds. She fired. The missile streaked out, tracking perfectly. The intruder veered sharply, evading, but Clara anticipated the escape route. Another missile, another precise shot. This time, the intruder was forced into a rapid climb, retreating momentarily. The second intruder attempted to regroup, banking sharply toward the squadron. Clara reacted instantly, intercepting its path, forcing it into a wide loop around the formation. Her hands moved with instinctive precision, mind sharp, pulse controlled despite the adrenaline surging through her. She had taken control. She had turned the hunters into the hunted, at least temporarily. The lead pilot's voice came again, calm but filled with awe. "Eagle 1, that was masterful. You've held the formation, protected your team, and neutralized their attack patterns. Exceptional work." Clara's chest swelled, but there was no time to relax. She knew the intruders hadn't been defeated, they had been tested, and they would return smarter, faster, deadlier. Her eyes scanned the horizon. Clouds swirled, golden light breaking through, but Clara's focus was unyielding. She was Eagle One. She had crossed from civilian to pilot, from observer to participant, from inexperienced to indispensable. The intruders had forced her to confront fear, test her limits, and rise to challenges she had only imagined in simulations. But deep in her gut, a cold realization struck. The intruders hadn't just attacked, they had sent a message. They were intelligent, adaptive, and relentless. And the final confrontation was looming, a battle that would demand every ounce of skill, every shred of courage, every split-second decision she could muster. The formation leveled, engines screaming in unison, shadows streaking across clouds and desert alike. Clara's hands relaxed slightly, but her mind remained alert. She was no longer just surviving. She was leading, protecting, strategizing. The intruders had tested her, and she had passed. Yet the sky held its breath. Somewhere above, the unknown aircraft waited, calculating, preparing for the ultimate strike. Clara clenched her jaw, eyes narrowing. The final test was coming, and when it did, there would be no second chances. The lead pilot's voice echoed once more, calm, steady, unwavering. "Eagle One, you've proven yourself, but be ready. The real challenge begins now." Clara's pulse thundered in her ears, adrenaline coursing like wildfire. She inhaled deeply, scanning the horizon, every sense alert. The intruders would return, and the sky would demand everything she had to give. She wasn't just a civilian anymore. She was Eagle One, and the ultimate test of skill, courage, and instinct was about to begin. The Nevada sky had become a theater of chaos. Clouds swirled like molten steel above a desert stretched thin by sunlight. The F-22 formation twisted and turned in perfect synchronization, engines screaming, shadows slicing across clouds, while Clara, Eagle One, gripped the throttle with iron resolve. She could feel her heart pounding in rhythm with the jet's engines. Every second was a test, every movement critical. The intruders had returned, two of them, faster, sharper, coordinated, and more lethal than ever. Their metallic forms glinted in the sunlight, darting toward the formation with predatory precision. Clara's stomach tightened. This was no longer a challenge. It was a fight for survival. She had survived previous attacks, solo maneuvers, and coordinated strikes, but this was the ultimate confrontation. The lead pilot's voice broke through comms, calm but taut. "Eagle One, you lead this intercept. Every move counts. Eyes sharp. Execute perfectly." Clara's chest constricted. Lead, all the training, the fear, the countless hours she had spent preparing, culminated in this singular moment. The lives of the squadron, perhaps hundreds of people, depended on her decisions in the next few minutes. She banked sharply, adjusting her vector to intercept the first intruder. The aircraft twisted in the clouds, almost anticipating her move. Clara felt a jolt of fear, but she swallowed it. Instinct, training, and pure nerve guided her. She pushed the F-22 to its limits, executing a split maneuver that forced the intruder to overshoot. Flare countermeasures streaked behind her, a fiery dance that illuminated the deadly ballet. "Eagle One missile lock," the second pilot shouted. Clara's pulse spiked. Her eyes flicked to the HUD, two incoming missiles aimed with terrifying precision. Without hesitation, she deployed countermeasures, flares zigzagging in perfect timing, narrowly diverting the weapons. She rolled sharply, banking into the second intruder, forcing it to break formation. Every maneuver was calculated, yet instinctive. Clara had become one with her jet, each adjustment a precise calculation, each movement a defiance of gravity and danger. The intruders circled, testing, probing, striking, yet she anticipated each move, reading their intent with the clarity of experience born from pure necessity. The first intruder fired again, high-velocity missiles streaking toward the lead pilot. Clara reacted instantly, diving and banking, placing her jet between the missile and her teammate. Countermeasures diverted the weapon at the last second, and the lead pilot banked sharply, narrowly escaping. Clara exhaled sharply, adrenaline surging, muscles trembling, yet her mind remained razor-focused. She was no longer a civilian. She was Eagle One, protector, strategist, and fighter. The second intruder attempted to flank her, banking vertically in a near-impossible climb. Clara followed, calculating trajectory, velocity, and timing with split-second precision. She released a calculated missile, tracking the intruder's movement. The enemy tried to evade, but Clara anticipated the escape path. The missile struck near the intruder's tail, forcing it into an evasive maneuver and temporarily breaking its attack pattern. The lead pilot's voice crackled, awe and respect mingling in his tone. Eagle One, exceptional. You're holding the formation and neutralizing threats in ways we didn't think possible. Keep it up. Clara didn't have time to respond. The intruders regrouped, now fully aware that the squadron had a new force to contend with, a civilian who had become a master of survival, a strategist, and a fighter capable of outmatching even the most skilled adversaries. Then a sudden flash on her HUD, a third unknown aircraft previously unseen emerging from cloud cover with unprecedented speed. Clara's pulse hammered. They had been marked, studied, and now faced an entirely new threat. The formation tensed, engines screaming in response to the sudden danger. Clara's stomach lurched. This was no ordinary adversary. It was faster, smarter, and more unpredictable than the previous two. She banked sharply, weaving through the clouds, dodging missiles, releasing countermeasures, and forcing the third intruder into evasive maneuvers. Every decision required precision. Every adjustment was life-saving. The F-22 responded like an extension of her body, engines screaming in unison, shadows streaking across the golden clouds. Clara realized she was no longer reacting. She was commanding, controlling, anticipating. The intruders attempted a coordinated strike, attacking from multiple vectors simultaneously. Clara's mind raced. She had seconds to act. She executed a split maneuver, banking sharply, coordinating movements with the lead pilot and the squadron. Countermeasures deployed, flares streaked, engines roared. She intercepted one missile with calculated precision, forcing another intruder to overshoot. Then she targeted the high-speed vector of the final threat, fire control locked, muscles tensed. The missile streaked toward the intruder, tracking with deadly accuracy. The craft attempted evasive maneuvers, banking, twisting, but Clara anticipated every move. The missile struck precisely, forcing the enemy into a sharp climb and breaking its attack formation. For a brief moment, the sky seemed to hold its breath. Clara's chest heaved, sweat stinging her eyes, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The intruders were retreating, but Clara knew this was temporary. The fight had tested her to the absolute limit. She had survived the first coordinated strike, executed solo maneuvers flawlessly, led the squadron under fire, and neutralized multiple threats. She had become a pilot of extraordinary skill, trusted by elite F-22 pilots and capable of feats that defied expectation. Her visor reflected the golden desert below, clouds swirling above, but Clara's mind remained focused, aware that this was a pause, not the end. The intruders would return more prepared, more aggressive, and this time the stakes would be higher. Yet she felt a strange surge of pride, fear mingled with exhilaration, and a sense of belonging she had never known. The lead pilot's voice cut through, calm, commanding, reverent. "Eagle One, you've proven yourself beyond measure. Not just skill, but courage, instinct, and leadership. You're one of us now." Clara's chest tightened, and for the first time she allowed herself to believe it. She wasn't a civilian. She was Eagle One. She was part of the sky now, bound by trust, skill, and the unyielding bond of life-and-death survival. But deep in her mind, one truth remained. The intruders had been adaptive, intelligent, relentless. They had tested her, but the war in the sky was not over. And when they returned, she would have to be ready, not just to survive, but to dominate, to lead, and to protect everyone depending on her. The formation leveled, engines screaming in unison, shadows streaking across the desert below. Clara inhaled, chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon. She was no longer just a civilian, no longer an observer. She was Eagle One, the pilot, the protector, the unexpected force that had changed the battlefield forever. Above the Nevada desert, the sky stretched endlessly, golden and crimson, alive with energy and potential. Clara's hands relaxed slightly on the throttle, but her mind remained alert. The intruders would return. The sky would demand everything she had, and she was ready. Eagle 1 had ascended. The sun broke fully over the horizon, illuminating the jets streaking across the clouds. Clara's pulse slowed, but the exhilaration remained. She had crossed a line, faced impossible danger, and emerged stronger, braver, and undeniably capable. The world below could never know the stakes, the seconds of terror, the split-second decisions that saved lives. But in the sky, she had been forged into something extraordinary. As the jets banked and leveled, engines humming with controlled power, Clara allowed herself one glance at the desert below, then forward into the endless expanse above. The intruders would return. The hunt was not over, but she was ready. She was Eagle 1. And the sky had finally claimed her.